Hello and welcome to Straight Talk, Supply Chain Insights, the podcast for your supply chain leader who is on the go and wants to be in the know. And now, your host, Lora Cecere.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Supply Chain Insights. My name is Lora Cecere. I'm the founder of Supply Chain Insights, and I do this podcast for the supply chain leader who's on the go, wants to be in the know, and wants to drive results. Today, I'm interviewing Igor Rikalo, and Igor is the Chief Operating Officer of Outsidein Solutions, and we're going to talk about Outsidein Processes. So, Igor, let's start. Tell the group a little bit about yourself. You've got a great background, and many people may not know about your background, how you came into supply chain planning and, how you landed at Outsidein. So give the group a little bit about you.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura, and great to be able to participate in this podcast. Listen, my educational background is in electrical engineering and computer science, right? So not quite operational research that is a traditional way of people going into the supply chain. But after I finished my grad school here in Texas, I actually joined a company called i2 Technologies back in the 90s, which was one of the what I would call first pure play enterprise software companies focused exclusively on supply chain planning, right? I got really excited about the space, got to learn. I actually started in their professional services group and actually worked with quite a lot of different companies implementing the technological solutions to a traditional supply chain planning problems. How do I forecast my demand better? How do I connect my demand to my supply capabilities better? How do I, understand my transportation and logistics constraints, or how do I expedite in that process, because we all want a least cost way to deliver our products to the end customers, right? And then that was kind of my beginning of the career. And then I joined after i2, I joined Outsidein. So I have a kind of preference for letter number companies, like, as you can see, and I've been there for about 12 years now, and really enjoying kind of seeing the company, build the product, go to market, and have successful clients in this space.
Well, I mean, that means we've known each other for about 2 decades, right? So, and the first time I came to visit you in 2009, I swear the office was about the size of a closet, right? I think there were 3 people in Dallas. And now, how many employees do you have?
So I think we're breaking to 2,600 people globally. We're present in all major kind of markets, North America, Europe, and Asia. And we have a quite a large center of excellence in India, where a lot of our development folks are and a lot of our professional services folks are.
So one of the differentiators, I think, of Outsidein is that you have pioneered the graph and supply chain planning on the graph. And, today I'm writing about AI and the graph and, the knowledge graph and the ability to learn on the knowledge graph. And it drives me crazy that people want to do the same old processes with what are much more advanced technologies. And I know you share some of that, hope and dream that I do. But let's start with, what is the graph and why do you think it's important and a powerful change from traditional deployments?
Yeah, I think there's many different kind of ways to define what it is and what it is not, right? But the way I like to think about it, right? Graph is, of course, it's a piece of technology, it's a piece of software as well, but it's really a think of a modeling paradigm, right? And I think it's a new way to model certain things that is a lot more beneficial than a traditional frameworks, right? And traditional frameworks being a relational database or kind of an OLAP based cubes, right? So I think that allows us really to be a lot more precise in how we kind of try to represent a very complex, let's say, enterprise, very complex physical kind of a supply chain and the processes within those supply chains in a much more straightforward and computationally efficient way. And not only that, right? It actually allows us to extend outside of the traditional boundaries of the supply chains, right? When you think about it, right, integrated business planning, right, requires all of the different functions in an organization and outside of the organization, right, to plan better. And we believe that the graph-based kind of a framework and the modeling kind of approaches are much more superior than a traditional ones.
Well, I think one of the great advantages of the graph is that it's much more adaptive. That the data, we've always been struggling with needing clean data, and the new technologies allow us to really embrace data of all forms and diversity and adaptive systems as our business grows. Now, you and I, for about 3 years, have been working on concepts of outside-in processes, right? I know I've talked to you so long that I probably drove the hair right off your head. But anyway, tell me your view of outside-in processes. I recently published some of the results, and I'm teaching a class. It's my third year of teaching classes. What's your view of outside-in processes?
I mean, listen, I think it is a natural way to really message better as to what some organizations are actually doing or what others should actually be doing. And really think of it, how do I sense the world around better? And then those kind of signals, how do I actually make them useful for our decision making, right? In effect, right, the organization is just a large group of people trying to make good decisions at the different time horizons, right? Some decisions we're making for tomorrow, some decisions for the next 21 days, some decisions for the next 10 years, right? But how do you inform those decisions not to kind of just look in a I think you call it traditional way, right, Laura, where it's like, okay, let's look at kind of what we see inside, but actually let those signals from outside come into that process. And it's very difficult. I mean, you mentioned the data challenge already, right? I think there's a lot of challenges to connect a transactional data that we all swim in every day, right, to some of the kind of a non-transactional data that's actually in the world around us. And that's where you're absolutely right. That's where graph-based kind of frameworks are very very helpful, and also, right, allow different organizations with different graphs to actually talk to each other.
So I was talking to someone yesterday who was talking about the use of generative AI and the graph and the dynamic building of knowledge graphs and, the power of that. And I was thinking about my average interaction of people that don't understand what a demand narrative is, or sentiment analysis, or how to think about data that doesn't neatly fit in rows and columns. How do we change the paradigm so that we're just not thinking about order to cash and procure to pay and ERP and believing that we have an end-to-end solution when DRP and TMS have nothing in common, or, revenue management and demand management have nothing in common. But the graph allows us to connect things that are dissimilar and things that change in different ways. But what I find cannot change as easily is people's minds, right? People want to stuff data in rows and columns and do planning the old-fashioned way. How do we change this? How do we,
Very true.
Yeah.
No, I know, Laura, you've been on that quest of helping companies unlearn before they learn. And I think that quest, I think the way you're approaching it, I really like, right? Because first of all, right, all of your research is open source, i.e. it's free to everybody right now. Right. The other barrier is, okay, even if it's free, right, it requires effort and energy. And I think that's where we all have to come as a community, right? Sometimes, right, we're placed in a kind of a roles that are somewhat adversarial for no particular reason between, let's say, a somebody like a technologist like myself versus the business leader in let's say in supply chain or finance and so forth. And I think it requires a lot of effective communication and sharing of the best practices. I've actually seen some of those actually become a lot easier as we're using some of these, social networks, right, to communicate better, right? And I think that is great.
So if somebody's listening and they wanted to do some work on the graph, or they wanted to test and learn about outside-in processes, what would you suggest that they do to get started?
I mean, I think we are all on a learning path together, and I think there's a lot of very excellent, learning materials. I think, as you said, right, you've been doing classes very frequently. I think what we've seen companies do a lot of test and learns. I think that is a great way to innovate. Some of these things are, like you mentioned, the Gen AI. I mean, I don't think anybody has an answer right now as to, okay, what are the best use cases for that in this domain that we talked about today, right?
But it's everywhere, right? We're in this middle of this hype cycle that it's everywhere but nowhere, right? It's frustrating to me. Yeah.
Yes. But then again, I've seen actually examples of companies doing some practical, pragmatic first steps, right? In terms of, hey, can we, even use the public kind of large language models? Then can we actually, of course, kind of create some of our own that protects the sensitive information and privacy? So I'm very encouraged, right, that people are taking some steps. As you can imagine, we've been kind of playing with it for the better part of last year as well, and we've seen some pretty exciting ways that we can apply to our own business, right? And then we're hoping, right, that some of those learnings we'll be able to package for other organizations as well.
So, last thoughts before we close?
No, I think this is a great year to invest into better decision making in the companies. I think it's a great year to experiment with some of the newer technologies, and I look forward to reading some of your thoughts and hopefully participate in that conversation on a go-forward basis.
Well, thank you, Igor. And as always, I love interviewing with business leaders and tech leaders. I want this to be a safe space for everyone to learn. So thank you for joining us for this podcast, Straight Talk with Supply Chain Insights. Why can we not drive better decisions through outside-in processes? And my time with Igor. All the best in your supply chain journey.